There is a strange silence hidden inside the modern world, a silence buried under millions of voices, screens, and signals. We live in a time where connection is constant, but attention, the pure act of being present, has become a rare and precious thing. Every moment, the mind is fed. News, opinions, images, alerts. The phone vibrates, the feed refreshes, and the psyche shivers in response. We scroll, click, react, again and again, until the act becomes reflex, a ritual of distraction disguised as communication. Carl Jung warned that humanity's greatest danger was not war or catastrophe, but the loss of the soul. And in the age of endless stimulation, this loss happens quietly, not through violence, but through noise. This is the age of noise, a time when silence has become unbearable, and distraction has become our favorite drug. We no longer fear darkness, we fear the absence of signal. The glow of a screen replaces the glow of the inner light. We have built a world where the mind is always on, and the soul always waiting. In our hunger for more information, we have forgotten how to digest experience. We know everything, except ourselves. We can name every trend, every story, every new crisis. But we cannot name the feeling that lives in our own chest. We talk endlessly about mindfulness while scrolling at the speed of anxiety. We chase connection through digital mirrors that multiply our emptiness. The collective unconscious, the great ocean of shared psyche, has moved online. It flows not through dreams, but through data. Memes replace myths. Viral trends replace archetypes. The gods have not disappeared. They have gone digital. Their temples are the timelines we refresh in search of meaning. But the cost is hidden. Every time we reach for the phone, a small piece of presence leaves our body. We become scattered, a thousand fragments floating in the electric current of collective attention. Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Today we avoid it by scrolling, filling every empty second with noise, so we never have to listen to what's underneath. The truth is simple and terrifying. Silence confronts us with ourselves. When the phone is off, the noise of the mind begins, and in that noise, the real work begins. We think we are afraid of missing out, but what we truly fear is meeting the part of us that's been waiting. The part that has been whispering beneath all the notifications. The part that remembers what stillness feels like. In this digital storm, we mistake activity for life. We confuse information with wisdom. We call it progress, but much of it is escape. Because when you are always connected, you never have to be alone. And yet, you are lonelier than ever. Every light that flashes across the screen steals a little of your inner glow. Every opinion absorbed becomes another mask you wear without noticing. The self, that fragile, luminous center Jung spoke of, is buried beneath layers of performance, approval, and noise. We perform for the world, but forget to live within ourselves. We mistake reflection for identity, and call the projection of others' eyes our own truth. This is the paradox of the digital age. We have built infinite mirrors, but lost the capacity to truly see. The ancient question, "Who am I?" has been replaced by, "How do I appear?" The persona, Jung's word for the social mask, has multiplied into dozens of profiles, avatars, and curated selves. We edit, filter, and polish the illusion, hoping someone, somewhere, will validate our existence. But what happens when the mask becomes the only thing left? When every moment of silence feels like erasure? When the soul begins to starve beneath the surface of constant attention? The psyche is not a machine. It cannot live on pixels and performance. It needs rhythm, mystery, rest. It needs the darkness between the signals, the space where imagination and meaning can breathe again. In this age, solitude is the new rebellion. Silence is the new luxury. And presence, the ability to be here, now, has become an act of spiritual resistance. Because when you unplug, you are not abandoning the world. You are remembering it. You are returning to the place where perception is pure again, where light is not filtered through glass, and time moves at the pace of your own heartbeat. The soul is not asking for escape, it is asking for space. It longs for stillness, not to withdraw, but to renew, to hear again the ancient voice beneath the algorithm, the voice that says, "You were never meant to live at the speed of machines." And so begins the first step of awakening, not through a new app, not through more information, but through a single, radical act, turning the noise off. To pause, even for a moment, is to reclaim the power of consciousness. It is to remind yourself that awareness is not something you consume. It is what you are. The soul has not vanished. It is still there, quietly waiting behind the hum of devices, in the silence between messages, in the breath between thoughts. When you dare to listen, you will find that silence is not empty. It is full of everything that matters. Carl Jung once wrote that the persona is the mask we present to the world, the role we play to meet the expectations of others. But what happens when the mask becomes the main character? When the reflection replaces the face and the image replaces the soul? We live in an era where identity is curated, filtered, and performed. Our profiles are not mirrors, they are stages. And on these stages, we learn the art of performance before we ever learn the art of presence. Each post, each update, each photograph is a small offering to the collective gaze. A prayer whispered into the algorithm. Please, see me. But beneath that whisper is something older, something aching. The same longing Jung spoke of, the desire to be whole. We build the persona to survive, to belong, to protect the fragile essence of the self hidden underneath. At first, the mask feels empowering. It allows us to navigate society, to fit in, to find our place in the world. But in the digital realm, the mask never comes off. It follows us to bed, wakes with us in the morning, stares back from every reflection glowing in glass. What began as protection becomes possession. The persona becomes not what we wear, but what wears us. We measure our worth in views and validation, our presence in pixels, our value in how many hearts blink red beneath our names. And each time we are unseen, a quiet panic rises, and as if invisibility were death. The collective unconscious of the internet feeds this illusion. It rewards the loud, the polished, the quick. It punishes silence, subtlety, reflection. And so slowly we adapt. We shapeshift into what the collective desires. We learn the rules of attention. We become our own marketing campaigns. Yet something inside resists. A voice beneath the noise says, "This is not you." You sense it when you stare at your reflection too long. You feel it when you realize you've become the observer of your own life. You notice that every attempt to connect leaves you emptier than before. Because the persona cannot love. It can only perform love. It cannot feel. It can only imitate feeling. It cannot live. It can only exist as a projection. The tragedy is not that we wear masks. It is that we have forgotten there is a face beneath them. Jung warned that over-identification with the persona leads to spiritual paralysis. The self becomes trapped in its own reflection, like Narcissus staring endlessly into the pool, enchanted by an image that will never embrace him. And the digital mirror is endless. It has no bottom, no edge, no silence. We scroll not to discover, but to stay asleep. Each swipe a heartbeat of avoidance. Each like a small dose of recognition to numb the ache of disconnection. The digital persona thrives on attention, but the soul thrives on authenticity. They are not the same. Attention is a flash of light. It burns bright, then disappears. Authenticity is a steady flame. It illuminates quietly from within. And so begins the inner conflict. The persona wants applause. The soul wants truth. The persona fears rejection. The soul seeks integration. The persona craves visibility. The soul longs for intimacy. When we confuse one for the other, we lose both. In Jung's psychology, the persona is necessary. It allows the individual to function within the collective. But to mistake it for the whole self is to live only half a life. The other half, the hidden, the unseen, the unshared, becomes the shadow. Every smiling photo hides an invisible ache. Every perfect caption conceals a quiet despair. The brighter the image, the darker the unseen becomes. The more we perform happiness, the less we allow ourselves to feel it. Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." Today, the greatest burden of our generation may be the unlived life of our digital selves. We are haunted not by ghosts, but by our own avatars, the ideal versions of who we wish to be. To heal this fracture, we must begin with honesty, not performative vulnerability, not aesthetic sadness, but the quiet courage to look at what we have become. To see the mask not as the enemy, but as a symptom, a signal that we are afraid to be seen as we are. The digital persona is not evil. It is a child of our collective need to be loved. But like every archetype, it must be recognized to be integrated. Integration does not mean deleting yourself from the world. It means remembering that the world is not yourself. It means being able to post and still be present, to speak without performing, to share without seeking, to look into the screen and still see the human behind it. This is the beginning of soul clarity, to know when you are speaking from truth and when you are speaking from image. Because behind the filters and profiles, there is something ancient and unfiltered, the simple presence of being alive, the part of you that does not need to be liked to exist. And when you find that, when you meet yourself beneath the performance, you begin to remember what Jung meant by individuation, the art of becoming who you truly are, even when no one is watching. We have never been more connected, and never felt more alone. In every pocket, a universe of voices. In every room, a glow that never sleeps. The modern world hums with constant presence, but this presence is hollow. We are surrounded by signals, yet starving for meaning. Jung once said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. And in this world of instant communication, it has never been harder to speak from the soul. We send messages, but rarely meaning. We share everything, but reveal nothing. We connect, not to meet, but to escape the silence in between. Every scroll, every click, every notification is a subtle avoidance of the void. We fear the quiet because it echoes back our emptiness. We reach for the phone not to find others, but to lose ourselves. The digital web promises intimacy, but delivers only reflection. We do not meet the other. We meet our own projections, our shadows cast through the light of screens. In Jungian language, the shadow is everything we deny, repress, or fear within ourselves. It hides beneath our polished personas, waiting for the moment when the light fades enough to be seen. But in the digital age, we have created a system that keeps the light blindingly bright, a constant glare that prevents us from seeing what lies beneath. We stay illuminated by the artificial glow of the collective, never daring to face the darkness that belongs to us alone. Every selfie hides an ache for validation. Every post of happiness conceals an anxiety of being forgotten. Every argument online is a projection of what we cannot accept within. We fight strangers on screens because it is safer than confronting the enemy inside. The more we connect, the less we reflect. And without reflection, there can be no self. The collective unconscious now lives in pixels, a shimmering ocean of fragments, half-truths, archetypes, and impulses. We scroll through it like dreamers wandering through myths they do not understand. The gods of old, desire, envy, approval, have not vanished. They have simply changed their form. They now live in the feeds and the timelines, whispering softly through the algorithm. Jung taught that the shadow must be faced, for only by integrating what we deny can we become whole. But the modern psyche has found a clever way to avoid that meeting, by flooding every moment with noise. In this digital storm, solitude feels like suffocation. We measure our worth in responses, our silence in missed notifications. The stillness that once nourished the soul now feels like death to the persona. But somewhere beneath the noise, a faint longing remains. A call from the unconscious, a whisper saying, "Come home." That whisper is easy to miss. It hides between swipes, between songs, between the endless suggestions of "what's next?" It asks for nothing, only that we stop running long enough to listen. This is the paradox of connection. We seek others to avoid ourselves, and in doing so we lose both. Every addiction begins with pain, and digital addiction is no different. We reach for stimulation to avoid stillness, but stillness is where the soul lives. The screen has become both mirror and prison. It reflects what we want to see, and hides what we need to see. But the shadow does not disappear because we ignore it. It grows in silence, waiting for the day when it can no longer be contained. It appears as exhaustion, anxiety, envy, despair. It appears in the quiet ache you feel when the feed ends and the room goes still. The modern crisis is not technological, it is spiritual. We are not drowning in information, we are drowning in disconnection. The shadow of connection is not darkness itself, it is the denial of darkness. The refusal to feel loneliness, to face boredom, to meet the parts of us that technology has taught us to numb. But there is a strange beauty in the shadow. Jung called it the workshop of the soul. When we turn toward it, when we dare to face what we've been avoiding, something shifts. We begin to see that loneliness is not emptiness. It is the space where the soul begins to speak again. To detox from the digital world is not to reject connection, but to purify it. It is to meet others not through performance, but through presence. It is to rediscover conversation, not as exchange, but as communion. And this begins, paradoxically, by facing the one thing we fear most: silence. Silence is not the absence of connection. It is the birthplace of it. It is the soil where meaning grows. When we are silent, we do not lose the world. We find it again, because the soul does not speak in noise. It speaks in images, in symbols, in subtle intuition. It waits behind the hum of devices, watching, patient, unchanging. And one day, when you finally turn off the screen and let the darkness settle, you may hear it again, a faint heartbeat that was never gone, the pulse of life beneath the static, the sound of yourself returning home. When the noise finally fades, what remains is not emptiness, but something more ancient, more tender. At first, silence feels unbearable. It presses against the skin like a weight, a reminder of all the things we've tried to avoid. Without the constant hum of information, we hear the static of our own minds. We begin to meet the echo of what we've buried: fear, grief, loneliness, longing. And yet, this meeting is not punishment. It is medicine. Because silence, though it frightens us, is the only place the soul can breathe. Jung wrote that the soul becomes only when it is alone. It is in solitude that the true voice of the psyche emerges, not the voice of the persona, not the chorus of the collective, but the quiet, timeless rhythm of being itself. In the modern world, retreat has become an act of rebellion. To unplug, even for a day, is to declare that your worth is not measured by visibility. To turn off the screen is to turn toward the self. At first, the withdrawal feels like loss. Your hands itch to reach for the device. Your mind craves the next signal, the next surge of validation. The silence feels heavy because you are detoxing. Not from technology, but from the addiction to distraction. In that space, you begin to notice the sound of your own breath, the rustle of leaves outside the window, the way light changes throughout the day. You begin to feel time again, not as something to fill, but as something to inhabit. Slowly, you realize that stillness is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. It is the mirror of the soul, clear and unfiltered, where thoughts settle like dust in water. When you stop running from the silence, you discover it is not empty at all. It is full, full of memories, full of symbols, full of the unseen life within you. Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." In retreat, this becomes true. Looking inward, you begin to see the subtle architecture of your being. Images rise from the depths, not random thoughts, but symbols of what has been neglected. Dreams become clearer. Feelings once numbed begin to speak again. This is not escape, it is return. You are not leaving the world. You are stepping back into it through a doorway of awareness. In the alchemy of transformation, this phase is called solutio, dissolution. The old forms dissolve so that new life can flow. In silence, the ego softens. The boundaries between mind and soul blur. You begin to sense that life is not something happening to you, but something flowing through you. The modern mind fears stillness because it cannot control it. But the soul thrives in it because it remembers what control forgets. That healing is not something we do. It is something we allow. When you enter silence fully, you find that it begins to shape you. You start to hear intuition again. A whisper beneath thought, gentle, precise, ancient. You realize that nature has always been speaking. The wind is a language. The trees hum with memory. The night sky holds the same depth as your own unconscious. Silence does not isolate you from life. It connects you to it more deeply. It reveals that the world was never separate from your inner life. That every sound, every movement, every breath is part of the same great conversation. In this awareness, something shifts. You stop chasing experience. You begin to receive it. The world becomes slower, wider, more intimate. You start to see beauty in the smallest things: light falling across a table, the texture of air after rain, the sound of your own heartbeat. Each moment becomes a doorway back to presence. Technology once promised to connect us, but true connection begins when you can sit alone and still feel whole. The silence is not loneliness, it is intimacy with existence. And here, in this sacred quiet, you begin to hear a voice that has been waiting for you. It does not shout. It does not demand. It simply says, "I am here." That voice is not the world speaking to you. It is life speaking through you. It is the part of you untouched by time, untouched by noise, untouched by performance. This is the real digital detox, not deleting apps, but remembering who you are without them. You may notice that the silence changes shape. What once felt heavy now feels alive. It breathes with you. It expands and contracts like the tide. And as you rest within it, you realize that this too is connection. A communion deeper than any signal, more real than any message. You have not disappeared. You have returned. And from this place of stillness, you can finally hear the world again. Not through screens, but through the soul. When the silence ripens, something begins to move again. Not the frantic motion of the old world, but a quiet pulse, steady and alive. It is the rhythm of being. It is presence returning home. You step back into the world, but something in you has changed. The noise is still there, the messages, the signals, the endless scroll, but they no longer possess you. They move around you like weather, and you stand beneath it, unshaken. Jung wrote that life is not about perfection, but wholeness. And wholeness is not found in escape, but in integration. In learning to hold light and shadow together, to walk through the noise without becoming it. This is not about rejecting the digital world. It is about remembering your humanity within it. The phone is no longer a prison, It becomes a mirror, a reminder to look up, to breathe, to see. You learn to pause before you post, to feel before you react, to listen before you speak, to allow the mind to rest in the same stillness you once feared. Technology itself is not the enemy. It is an amplifier of our attention, our fears, our longing. And what it amplifies depends on the consciousness that wields it. The same network that spreads distraction can also spread wisdom. The same screen that numbs can also awaken. It is not the signal that corrupts. It is the absence of awareness within it. And so your task is not to flee the system, but to bring your soul back into it. To let the light you found in silence illuminate the spaces where others have forgotten to look. Presence is not a state you achieve once. It is a practice moment by moment. It is the act of noticing, the act of choosing, the act of returning, again and again, to what is real, what is here, what is now. In the beginning, connection was mechanical, then it became emotional. Now it must become sacred, a mindful exchange between souls, not just profiles. You learn that true connection cannot be coded. It is born in the space between words, in the silence between thoughts, in the gaze that sees without judging. Presence makes even the smallest things divine. A message sent with awareness becomes a prayer. A conversation held with depth becomes communion. A moment of stillness becomes eternity disguised as time. And here, in this simplicity, you rediscover joy. Not the thrill of stimulation, but the quiet radiance of existence itself. You no longer crave to be seen. You begin to see. You no longer chase meaning. You begin to make meaning by how you live. In the language of Jung, this is the moment of individuation, the union of opposites within the self, the human and the digital, the silence and the signal, the inner and the outer. You realize that awareness is the true technology, older than any machine, smarter than any algorithm. It can hold chaos without drowning and create order without control. This is what the soul was seeking all along. Not escape from the modern world, but a way to awaken within it. Presence becomes your compass. Every breath a calibration. Every pause a homecoming. When you walk through a city now, you feel the same stillness you found in solitude. Every sound becomes music. Every light a reflection of consciousness. You understand that the world was never separate from the soul. It was only waiting for you to return to it awake. And maybe this is what Jung foresaw, that the future of psychology is not withdrawal, but integration. That even in an age of machines, the human heart remains the final mystery. When you wake each morning, you no longer reach for the screen first. You let your awareness arrive before your attention wanders. You notice the silence before the day begins. And within it, you feel the same presence that once met you in retreat. The digital age has not stolen the soul. It has only distracted it. And now, you know how to call it back. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, you invite the soul home. Each time you choose silence over noise, you honor the sacred within the ordinary. Each time you pause, you return to the center of what you are. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of living consciously. The soul does not ask for isolation. It asks for intimacy, with life, with others, with the moment itself. And when you learn to be truly present, you will discover that the world has been waiting for you all along. Not as a consumer, not as a performer, but as a witness. A quiet, awake, luminous witness to the miracle of being alive.